Mr. Chair, I would actually move House File 50 before us. And does this then go back to Ways and Means?
This will be referred to the Judiciary Committee.
Judiciary, and that this be referred to Judiciary Committee.
All right, very well. Representative Hornsting, House File 50 is before us. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I know that I have an author's amendment. I'm not sure if you want to address that first or you want me to get to the main body of the bill. Whatever the chair and the committee desire would be. I will follow your lead, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Hornsting, why don't we move your amendment? Because this is going to put the bill in the shape that you want it before us.
Sure. It's
So
the
then,
A5 amendment, Mr. Chair, and I could address that if you'd like.
very well. Representative Dane, would you care to move the A5 amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll move the author's A5 amendment.
Very well. The A5 amendment is before us. Representative Hornsting, if you could describe the A5 amendment, and then I believe there's an amendment to the amendment.
Sure.
That we'll take up if it's offered.
Okay.
Offered.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for hearing House File 50 and the accompanying amendment. I think many of you are familiar with the hands-free bill. It passed this committee last year. It has been vetted by a number of other committees as well. But in the course of the public discussion of this, some issues had come up around the need to get some additional data on traffic stops as it relates to this legislation if enacted. And so the A5 is an amendment that will collect data, a demographic type of data related to traffic stops that the state patrol is involved with. And it calls for a study both before the enactment of the bill and after, so that there can be some comparative data. And so that's the goal of the A5 amendment.
Very well. Representative Nash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have questions on the amendment, but I would also move the amendment to the amendment, the A6.
Very well. Representative Nash moves the A6 amendment. Representative Nash.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Hornstein, you and I have spoken about this bill, but not on this particular amendment. And I just have some concerns. One, in creating this study, there's going to be a cost. There's no assessment of that cost of collecting this data, storing this data. Who's going to create, manage, and administer the database that this goes into? And we've all seen, without being very proud of how it's been done, how MNLARS has worked, and this would be a department project that would be probably administered and built by minute, so be very afraid of that. But I find some of the things that you're collecting, I'm surprised that you're collecting those pieces of information, but some of the things that are missing that I think my amendment to your amendment would fix would also be the immigration status of people who are being stopped. Because obviously, some of them may not even have driver's licenses, so we're going to want to collect that, Representative Hornstein and members. I think that that's an appropriate thing. So the amendment to the amendment would ask immigration status and collect that and hopefully put it into a database that somebody other than Minute would build if your amendment is engrossed. And I would request a roll call.
The roll call has been asked on the A6 amendment. I'm wondering if Commissioner Harrington, Public Safety, if you can come forward. There's a question. There were two issues you put on the table just now, Representative Nash, if I heard you correct. One is the broader issue of data collection. And I think we have an expert here who can tell us about, what that universe looks like. And then there's the issue of the A6 amendment itself. But welcome to the committee, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Harrington, Department of Public Safety Commissioner. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Commissioner, I'm wondering if you can describe for the committee what the data parameters are, realities are, relative to this kind of collection, whether it's currently existing, what our capacity is, and then also, I think Representative Nash, you had a very specific point around Minute. And I'll let you restate that
Sure.
if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the Commissioner, this is data that you're going to be collecting that you currently do not collect, correct?
Most of this data, Mr. Chairman, yes, this is mostly data that we do not collect currently.
And Mr. Chairman,
Representative Nash.
to that end, this data is going to have to be stored in some database. You're going to have to make changes to either an existing database or create a new database. And I think, Representative Hornstein, you're requiring that this be a new project, so it would ostensibly go into a new database. And again, caution all of the members here, be deathly afraid of that. But again, the things that you put in your amendment that I'm trying to amend seem incomplete if you're truly trying to track who is being stopped that is not utilizing a hands-free device. And this is a serious issue. If you're truly trying to find out who are the people not abiding by this law, if your bill becomes law, this is something that I would imagine everybody would be in favor of, making sure that we're tracking the immigration status so that you can know maybe who's not even supposed to be driving if they don't have a driver's license, or if they do have a driver's license. This is important stuff. So, members, I would ask for your support, and just to remind, I did ask for a roll call.
Of course, very well. Commissioner Harrington, this is probably an appropriate time to then talk about the A6 amendment as well. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, if you have it before you.
Mr. Chair, yes, I have seen the A6 amendment. I have had a chance to look at it and give it some consideration. And in my opinion, as a police professional, having served for over 40 years, this is not information that would lend itself to increased safety in the state of Minnesota. It is not information that police departments who currently do data collection around traffic stops collect. And I do not see how this would be relevant to, especially to this particular hands-free bill.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If by your own admission, the data that Representative Hornstein's authors amendment is data you do not collect, and you're also saying that mine does not either, I fail to see the relevance of his and not mine. So I'm again urging members to consider the A6 amendment and engross it, because you're already telling us that the other data he wants to collect is germane, but you're saying that mine is not. I find that to be a pretty stark juxtaposition, and and moreover, I still haven't heard an answer as to who's going to be administering this large database. And moreover, I'm deeply concerned by the potential fiscal impact to our law enforcement across the state. You've got counties who are now going to be collecting way more data, post-processing that, handling that once they get back to their headquarters. You're actually layering costs onto these law enforcement professionals, and I think that that's clearly something that you haven't thought through.
Representative Hornstein.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to also address Representative Nash's concerns, and I think Commissioner Harrington can as well. But just to clarify a few things, because there's a little bit misunderstanding about the amendment. It's my understanding that much of information about traffic stops is already being collected by the State Patrol through an electronic database an existing database that they have. And so we're just asking for a little bit more information. So that's number one. Number two, for a limited amount of time, a matter of months. Number two, Mr. Chair and members, the state patrol officers, as well as this kind of data collection is now done routinely as a matter of course in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. Actually, much more data than we're requiring on this amendment. But officers are not asking, this is very important, Mr. Chair and Representative Nass, officers are not asking the individual who's being stopped for any information. They are making the assessment themselves. So there's a huge difference between what we're asking for in this amendment and what's being asked for in the amendment to the amendment. There's not interaction on demographics that officers are asking people at a traffic stop in the A5 amendment. But under Mr. Representative Nash's amendment, there is actually going to be this interaction literally asking someone their immigration status. So we can get into some of the other safety issues around that question being asked and why that's problematic. But I just wanted to make sure that, Mr. Chair and the committee, you knew the difference between what we're asking for in my amendment and what Representative Nash is talking about.
Commissioner Harrington.
Mr. Chair, in point of fact, the Minnesota State Patrol uses an e-citation method of collecting data on all traffic stops. What this information would be, we have empty fields that are in the e-citation system currently, and what this bill would do was we would use those empty fields in an already existing database to capture this amount of data. So there is not a new database or a new IT system that is necessary. My experience, both in my last employment at Metro Transit and prior to that in St. Paul, is that the database systems already exist, they're robust enough, and then it's simply a matter of cutting the data out for a limited period of time to be able to make a reasonable judgment and study and summarize what you've got from the collection on the road. So there should be no impact on Minnesota county sheriffs or county administrations. This really should have no impact fiscally because the data already will be there, and it's simply a matter of us using already existing systems to capture that data.
Very well. Representative Nash.
Well, Mr. Chair, not to belabor the point, but anytime you collect additional data, it creates additional work, and additional work incurs additional cost. That's just an incontrovertible fact. So to say that it has no fiscal impact is just plain wrong. So respectfully, I urge members, you should either, if you're going to vote my amendment down, you should also vote Representative Hornstein's down, because it's creating an undue burden on counties and the State Patrol. And you're creating new data. You have no consideration of cost because it will incur additional costs. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nash. We are hearing directly from the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety on how this works and the existing framework and methodology that even includes empty fields. It does stretch my imagination to think that there would be a cost to that. We do have more questioners. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was initially struck with, I thought the first part of the conversation was from the commissioner said that they don't currently collect this information. And then I thought I understood the chair to say, or the bill author to say they do collect this information. It wouldn't be that hard. So that was, but yeah, if you could clarify that. But then I guess my question comes to, on the amendment, you had spoken about the method of collection. And I'm seeing here, not the amendment to the amendment, but the original amendment. On line 2.14 through 2.17, it says, the Minnesota State Patrol shall rely on their own observation to collect these different demographics. And then the commissioner mentioned an e-ticket system. So my first question then is not, the information that's collected by observation of the officer, is it not going to be de-identified? It would be collected as part of identified information in an e-ticket system?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
Representative Lucero, yes, it would be collected as part of the e-citation system. And when I said that some of the data is collected, some of the data is not. So, for example, the location of the traffic stop is currently collected on the e-citation system. The time of the traffic stop is currently collected on the e-citation system. Currently, the observation by the state trooper as to the race of the driver is not collected as part of the e-citation system, but is an empty field, and so it's simply a matter of them adding that field onto the e-citation so that it can be collected.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then the commissioner stated in regards to the amendment that it was the opinion of the commissioner that immigration status would not be relevant to the safety, public safety, as the reasoning to speak against the amendment to the amendment. Well, if the immigration status is not germane to the safety, I would beg to differ with potential uninsured motorists driving. But if immigration status is not relevant to public safety, how is the ethnicity of somebody relevant to public safety? And would you share the same opinion then, that ethnicity wouldn't be, or race wouldn't be relevant?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lucero, it is my opinion that collecting demographic data gives a much richer background for who is driving on the state of Minnesota roads and gives us a better way of assessing how we would do education and prevention activities in that regard. Whether they are here with, as a current resident or not, does not really impact that one way or another. So in my mind, it is not germane to increasing, or in fact, germane to reducing the number of people who are driving with an electronic device in their hands as to where they came from originally or what their immigration status is.
Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then another question for the bill author. So going back to that same section on the original amendment, it says personal observation. Then I can presume that there wouldn't be any questions asked by the law enforcement officer to the motor vehicle driver. But if they did ask a question, could the person refuse to answer? And if they refuse to answer, would they be violating the law by not cooperating with the law enforcement officer?
Representative Hornsby.
Mr. Chair and Representative Lucero, so to the first question you asked before this question, that I wanted to address because you asked. The reason that this is, existing, we're looking at an existing framework is that e-citation network. So that's already in existence. So I wanted to address that question first. Secondly, I'll just defer to, Commissioner Harrington on, the nuances of the interaction between law enforcement and folks that get stopped for a traffic stop in terms of the kinds of questions that are asked and how that would relate to the study.
Well,
If that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, of course. And specifically, Commissioner, I'm a little turned around here on the question because I don't think the issue on the table is the creation of a violation of law by virtue of making an observation, the demographics of the driver here. But please, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lucero, if I understand your question right, if a trooper was to ask questions while during a traffic stop and the person declined to answer, I do not believe that that would be a violation of statute outside of the context of implied consent and some of the other areas where we have very specifically, and so you're required to provide identification, proof of insurance, these kind of things. The trooper would be able to ask those questions, and if there were not satisfactory or if there was a refusal to give those information, those laws would then be in place. But if we were asking a question about ethnicity or age, which should be on the driver's license, once again, that would not be prohibited by any other statutory law, and so I do not see that as a secondary violation.
Representative Representative
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I'm looking at the amendment to amendment, and I'm looking at the original amendment, on line 1.6, the amendment to amendment says delete citizens, and I actually don't think we could delete citizens without deleting the "of" in front of it. But I think this amendment to the amendment should be divided, and between line 1.3 and 1.4, and I would recommend that we approve line, the first half of that would change line 1.6 to shall oversee a study on traffic stops to determine, and just remove citizens, because in many ways, as we begin to use the term citizen, then we begin to get into that notion, well, are they a documented citizen? What do we mean by that? And I think if we remove that completely of citizens, we sort of go beyond that. But I would request that we divide the amendment to the amendment and take up these two issues separately.
Very well. Representative Dean moves to divide the A6 amendment between lines 1.3 and 1.4. I'm going to turn to our legal counsel to make sure I'm correctly stating that. And then Representative Dean's asked that we act on the first part of that amendment
Correct.
first. Are we clear, members? Discussion.
Mr. Chair, if you could have legal counsel walk through what the implications of that division is.
Certainly. if legal counsel can walk through the division so that we're all clear about what the division does, or where the division is.
Mr. Chair, members, the motion would be to divide between lines 1.3 and 1.4 on the amendment to the amendment. The effect would be to create two separate amendments. The first amendment would be to delete the word citizens. The second amendment would be to make the other changes in that amendment to the amendment.
And let me, Representative Dean, I think we're not quite capturing this. There's a technical issue with the word "of."
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I find it difficult to just delete the word citizen, because it would actually read then, shall oversee a study on traffic stops of to determine. So I think we should include the "of," just sort of as an oral amendment to the amendment, if that's possible, because it just makes sense as far as statutorily to have it read exactly how we want it to read.
Chairman Dean, the chair does find that that's a minor and technical amendment or addition to this amendment. And so I will allow that, and so perhaps I can have legal counsel then go through it again for us.
Mr. Chair, members, it would mean that it would read, at line 1.3 of the amendment, it would read page 1, line 6, delete, quote, the new language of citizens, end quote. That would be one amendment. The second amendment would be the remainder from page 1, line 4 through page 1, line 8.
And Representative Dean, the effect of that would be that any stop of any individual that would be involved here, right?
Which, Mr. Chair, I believe was the author's intent of any stop of any individual.
Representative Hornstein, is
Yeah,
that
so
correct?
Representative Dean is correct.
Very well.
Mr. Chair.
So, hold on. So members, so we're going to vote on the first part of the divided amendment, and Representative Lucero on this point.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I want to make sure I understand. So my understanding of, if an amendment is divisible, it has to, each part has to stand on its own. And based on the conversation that just took place, it would not be divisible because each part doesn't stand on its own. But then the amendment, it's actually an amendment to the amendment to the amendment, and I'm not sure that's in order.
Representative Lucero, I've been told by legal counsel that it's not an amendment to amendment to amendment, it's a division of an amendment to amendment, and that is in order. But to your first question, whether or not these two pieces can stand alone, I will ask legal counsel's opinion on that.
Mr. Chair and members, I believe this ultimately is your decision about whether or not, but the advice that I can give is that the deletion of the phrase "of citizens" would not directly affect the changes made on the other lines in the amendment. It's possible. That's all.
And so, members, the chair finds that both provisions do stand on their own. Further questions on the first part of the amendment? All right. If not, then all in favor of the lines 1.1 through 1.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question.
Representative Lucero.
Was there a roll call on the amendment to the amendment, so wouldn't the roll call stand on the division as well?
I would think not, but I'm certainly open to a roll call request.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Representative Lucero asked for a roll call on the first part of the divided amendment. This is starting to get a little, this is kind of fun. All right, so members, we're voting on 1.1 through 1.3, which is the first part of the divided amendment. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, there's a roll call.
Yes, we do.
The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Mariani,
Yes.
Christensen, Considine,
No.
Dean,
Yes.
Edelson,
Yes.
Grossel,
No.
Howard. Yes. Johnson.
Yes.
Lesh, absent. Long,
Yes.
Lucero,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
No.
Miller Moeller.
Sorry, I forgot there was a Miller.
Miller, Moeller,
Yes.
Nash,
Nope.
O'Neill,
No.
Pinto,
Yes.
Poston,
No.
Oh, on this, second part, sure.
10 nays. 6 nays.
At a vote of 10 ayes and 6 nays, the motion prevails. We now have the second part of the amendment before us, which is lines 1.4 and 1.8. Discussion. I do have a list of folks, is the list to these, so then Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Harrington, you addressed the public safety issue around whether or not this language would be relevant to texting while driving. I'm curious about the broader public safety implications of asking about immigration status. It's my understanding that immigration enforcement is the province of the federal government and not the state highway patrol, and that asking about immigration status could have negative consequences for individuals' trust of police and their willingness to report crimes or be witnesses to crimes, and wondering if that is an opinion you share, or if you have concerns about the public safety implications of asking about immigration status.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative Long, in my 40 years of policing, we have learned many things about enforcement of immigration. You are absolutely correct that immigration enforcement is the province of the United States federal government, and it is not in the province of local, state, or county police. And so it does not appropriately belong within the province of the Minnesota State Patrol. In addition to that, it has also been our experience that inquiring into immigration status has a chilling effect on victims of crime and witnesses of crime, and those are the folks that we, in fact, have to depend on in order to get information about criminal activity and the threats to our safety. And so asking about immigration status on a broad basis where it's not relevant to a particular criminal activity such as human trafficking or illegal narcotics trafficking, asking outside of that has had a negative effect in terms of providing information that police and public safety officials can rely on to keep us all safe.
Representative Long? Representative Mueller? No? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Miller. One letter makes a difference.
They look a lot alike. So, Mr. Chair, thank you. And just as a quick pause, I have a question as to the bill itself, so I can ask that after this, or I can wait till later. I just don't want to add confusion
Why don't we
there.
do it after? I'll make sure
No
that
problem.
you're
but
on the list for that.
I do have something to this, though, real quick. And thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'm supporting basically the amendment to the amendment from Representative Nash, and it's a consistency thing. I heard that it's the opinion of the officer, and then it's a goal to make roads safer. Okay, I get that part. But then everything that you just said contradicts lines 1.15 and lines 1.16, where it says race, ethnicity, or both of the driver and the gender of the driver. I guess I'm confused by a couple things I'd like you to address. How the gender of the driver is important to know how safe the roads are. I mean, if we find out that there's more men than women that are texting while driving, we change the law to reflect so that men can't do certain things and women can. And then with the race and ethnicity of a driver, that's sort of stunning to me that we're going to actually, if there's one conversation we've had in society in the last couple of years, we've got to stop profiling people. And now we're going to purposely profile people off of this study. We're going to ask an officer to determine you are this race or you are this ethnicity, and I'm going to record that. And actually with this information, I assume there's going to be a name attached to this. Now you may scrub that out when you do analysis, but we're running information based off of someone's, what happens if there's a specific race that is off the charts in texting while driving? What exactly are you going to do to that? And how does that improve safety of driving? So I can get your argument of why you don't include, I don't totally agree with it, but I can get the country of origin and nationality, that sort of stuff. But if you're going to be consistent with that argument, then certainly you can't include number 3 and 4 on that list. So I'm not quite understanding why you're saying one and doing another. If you could clarify that for me.
Commissioner.
Chairman, Representative
Miller.
Miller. Okay. No, I'm going to get this right before it's all
We're
over
good.
myself. The issue of racial profiling, I think, is an important one. But the term racial profiling really speaks to the issue of officers using the race of the driver as a rationale for making the stop. And what this does is simply record the race of the driver after a lawful stop that was race neutral and essentially race blind. So I do not believe that what this bill will do is increase racial profiling. What it will do is it will provide additional information so that the Minnesota Highway Patrol and the Traffic Safety Council and others can do a better job of addressing concerns by community about whether there is racial profiling. And it will also allow us, for example, in the case of gender, it may also allow us to do a better job in our prevention and educational activities. That if we know the background and the demographics of the drivers who are most frequently texting while driving, can we not apply that as we are approaching schools, doing our general advertising, as we're trying to design prevention activities, we'll be able to tailor those educational activities to the specific group that is the most often offending. Now, it may well be that this is in fact a universal offense and there is no spikes in there, in which case our general approach, which we're using now, which is sort of a general approach to say everyone should act safely, makes sense. But with additional demographic information, we will be able to tailor make some of our educational approaches. It will not change our enforcement approach. Enforcement has to be based on behavior. That's the gold standard for police enforcement, is that what we do is based on the behaviors that we observe, not on the race, ethnicity, or gender of the person who's actually committing the offense.
Thank you. One more quick question, Mr.
Please,
Chair.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, I hear what you're saying, but let me play that out. Let's say Representative Hornstein gets pulled over because he just can't stop watching YouTube while he's driving down the road, okay?
I don't drive, Mr. Chair.
Play with me
You would
here.
be on the green line mostly if that was the
And
case.
the officer puts in that I had a Jewish driver, because determination is, it's a good guess, right? I love you, Representative Hornstein, you know that, right? But let's say it puts in, now let's say that there's a trend that, the way I'm hearing this, so please tell me if I'm looking at this wrong, the way I'm hearing this is, what if there's a trend that there's Jewish drivers that have a problem watching YouTube while they're driving down the road, okay? I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm throwing out the hypothetical. And you come back and you had said, well, we need to modify education and stuff based on the information that we receive. How are you not holding people who are Jewish at a deferential treatment of the law based on their race? So when you say that someone is not going to be, the law is not going to be held differently before them based on race, ethnicity, or gender, okay? I'm not hearing that, because you're saying you may have to change the education and how you train people. Now, I understand the validity of the fact that we're probably not going to see that trend, okay? But we are going to see other trends, otherwise you wouldn't be measuring this. And you just told me that you're going to change your education models based off of what you see those trends. Is that going to be education for the driver, education for the police? Who exactly is that education for?
Mr. Chair, Representative Miller,
Commissioner.
and I think I appreciate your clarification, because when I say education, what I am talking about is education for the drivers. So given your example, what I would then suggest is that if there was a spike that showed that Jewish drivers were driving distracted more often, then where would I go to have the most educational impact to make sure we're informing them about the fact that by driving distracted, they are 23 times more at risk than if they were not driving distracted? Could I not go to synagogues? Could I not go to Jewish community schools to have that conversation? And it's not an enforcement activity, it's an educational activity to cause them to change their behavior by simply making them better informed drivers on the road. So this will not have an impact on enforcement, but what we hope to have is an impact on the behaviors, and thereby, by reducing the behaviors, we reduce the crashes, and that makes all of us much safer.
Okay, just one final comment, Mr. Chair, and I'll be done.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we're spending, I haven't looked at the clock, but probably half an hour on an amendment to an amendment and an amendment. I would encourage, and I actually forget who, is the amendment from you? Representative
Yes.
Hornstein? Okay. I would encourage Representative Hornstein, a lot of times in committees, this is the place to do it, to maybe go back and work on it. And so maybe if he would consider, because it's moving to other places, right? It's moving to judiciary, I believe, Mr. Chair?
I believe so.
If perhaps the amendment itself, if we can just kind of hold it off and have that readdress another committee with some of these things that can be addressed a little bit better, because I frankly don't see the clarity in it. And I think the fact that we're creating roll calls and 35, 40 minutes of discussion is indicative of that. So that's my recommendation. I'll let you do, I'll respect whatever you do, but that's my recommendation.
Representative Hornstein, it is the chair's intent to have us vote on this amendment.
Yeah.
It is the chair's intent to have us vote on this bill. It is, will be up to the committee to see whether this bill moves forward. At that point, then it's the next committee's duty to work it further. And so I, quite frankly, Representative Hornstein, that's the chair's intent. Commissioner, let me ask you 3 questions, if I might, very quickly. In the last generation, there has been concern about racial profiling, not just here, but all across the country. Is racial profiling, in fact, something that law enforcement understands as a reality and takes seriously?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. Racial profiling, dating back to studies done out in New Jersey and all over the United States, has definitely been a concern for policing. And we spent years and years essentially training officers to make sure that our policing was race neutral and was blind, essentially. To that point, the Minnesota Post Board requires every police officer that goes through post standards to be trained in procedural justice. We require them all to go through implicit bias training, all of which are supplements to teaching them about the gold standard and the ethical standards of policing, where race cannot be a variable in making decisions, either to pull a car over or to take enforcement action. So it is absolutely a concern that has longstanding in police and peace and public safety, and continues to be a concern in public safety conversations and criminal justice conversations.
So, Commissioner, it seems to me that as we move to address that, we're not addressing a mythical thing. Racial profiling is an issue. We can agree or disagree to what degree, the nature, whatever. But it seems to me that racial profiling is an issue in the state of Minnesota. Am I correct with that?
Mr. Chair, that is absolutely correct. Even my most recent position as Chief of Police at Metro Transit, it became a issue there. And this response is very similar to the response that we crafted at Metro Transit of collecting data so that we could do a better job of both educating the officers, training the officers, I guess is probably a more appropriate way of describing it, but also making sure that we educated our passengers as to what they could reasonably expect from police when they were being stopped.
And Commissioner, I want to thank you for your work in that regard when you were head of our transit. My understanding is that that has fostered a level of community ownership and participation, which is what we want from our law enforcement activities. With that, I'm going to continue with, we have several other questions. Representative Grasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Commissioner, for making that statement earlier about our LEOs being, we're supposed to be race neutral and blind when we're dealing with these things. I caught a little flack the other day for saying that same thing. Apparently, people don't believe me, but I hope they believe you. So thank you for bringing that out again. You know, you talk about the federal agencies. As state law enforcement agents, I am a retired deputy sheriff, and we are to cooperate with our federal law enforcement agencies as well, are we not?
Mr. Chair, Representative Gruffalo, yes, that's true. Grisello, sorry.
Grussel.
Gressel, sorry.
That's okay. I've been people having trouble with my name since I was a little kid. So it just goes by. Thank you, Mr.
Very
Chair.
well, thank you, Representative
And
Russell.
Representative Buller.
Representative Johnson.
So when we're,
Sorry, I thought you were done, Representative.
Oh.
My apologies.
you keep doing that to me,
Representative
Mr. Chair.
Russell. I know. You and I, we're going to connect, man. Representative Russell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Commissioner, I guess the amendment to the amendment, how would that not be helpful in making sure that we ensure that we keep that cooperation between agencies to help each other in these things? Because over my years in law enforcement, I've made several traffic stops in the middle of the night and have found out that the individual inside of the vehicle is without a Minnesota driver's license, is without a passport or a work visa or anything. They're here illegally. And I've had to hold them for Border Patrol or someone to come and take care of these individuals. I guess, why wouldn't this information help in this data to make sure that we have the best people, or the safest people driving on the roads?
Mr. Chair, Representative Grossel. In my experience, first of all, the Immigration Enforcement Act that most folks are in violation of is a civil act. It is not a criminal act, and as a consequence, it is a blending or a blurring of the line to say that police officers who are investigating a criminal infraction should in fact be substituting themselves in to be doing civil enforcement for the federal government. So in addition to that, my experience, at least in the last 20 years, has been that most departments have found that if they called the duty officer back in those days when we did, that the United States government was absolutely not interested in someone who had a driver's license violation. They were only interested if this was relevant to a significant criminal violent crime. And as I said, with the rare exception of where you're investigating a violent crime where immigration status is relevant to that crime, I find that it has a reverse effect by asking that question to the general public. Asking that question will cause you to have people withdraw, not give you more information, and that makes us less safe. And in any case, the civil violation of overstaying a visa or that doesn't really have any impact on whether or not they had a phone in their hand while they were driving and thereby might crash into somebody. Their immigration status, I do not believe, is relevant to that particular investigation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Representative Grassel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In a normal traffic stop, I mean, the first thing I'm going to ask for is do you know why I stopped you? And wait for their response, and then I'll ask them for their license and their insurance information. And through this traffic stop, if I stop them, even if I stop them for that hands-free violation, I am going to come to this point to where things just aren't adding up here. They don't have a license. They don't have any kind of ID or any information. So I don't know how things are done in St. Paul, but if we don't have that information, we're holding on to them until we can figure out, okay, who am I dealing with here? Now, on the flip side of that, they're also, in dealing with someone who is in the country illegally, I've bought multiple times methamphetamines while working undercover from people who are here illegally and trafficking large amounts of methamphetamine to the 3 reservations, Red Lake, Leech Lake, and White Earth reservations, and all the counties around there where I was a law enforcement officer. And, you know, I guess there's some lines in there that if we are going to be making these traffic stops, you're going to be doing these investigatory stops while you're working through the process of a regular traffic stop for a violation of this kind, where you're going to gather this information. What are we supposed to do with it then?
Representative
Chair.
Grassel, I I think there are citizens that traffic in methamphetamines and other illegal drugs as well, so I think we.
Oh, yeah, no, that's, but those are, Mr. Chair, I'm just saying, as far as this amendment goes, to the amendment, you know, I've bought narcotics from countless numbers of people, both citizens and non-citizens. So, I mean, I'm not saying that those are the only folks that are transporting narcotics. But when it pertains to this amendment, I guess if we have that information, what are we supposed to do with it as LEOs?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative Grassel, the standard that we would apply is the behavioral standard. So what behaviors are actionable in this case? You are required to have a driver's license. That's actionable. You're required to have insurance. That's actionable. Those are actionable. You're not allowed by the statute to have the phone in your hand or be watching your YouTube videos in the front seat of the car. Those are also actionable. Whether you are doing that having been born in Bemidji or Belize is not actionable. What I would say is that I would take action on the behaviors that I observed, which is I asked you for the driver's license, you didn't have a driver's license. I would take my normal procedures for what do I do with someone who doesn't have a driver's license, whether they don't have a driver's license because they have not paid their fines and the driver's license has been revoked because of that reason, whether they don't have a driver's license because they're underage and they have not acquired a driver's license or their driver's license expired. I would simply take action based on the behaviors that I observed, and I do not believe that their immigration status is relevant to that particular behavior. And that's what I could take action on legally.
Members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Grasso. Members, we have public testimony, I believe. Representative Hornstein from families have been impacted adversely and perhaps tragically as a result of the behavior that this bill attempts to address. I want to honor their presence here today, make sure that we get to their testimony today, now, as opposed to dragging them back into the evening. The rest of us, we're here. It's a 24/7 job, so we can do that. So with that, Representative Johnson, I'm going to have you ask your question, and then I want us to move. We will then move to a vote on this amendment, and then we'll move over to the testimony. Members, in 5 minutes, I'd like to get to the testimony of the public on this. Representative Johnson.
Mr. Chair, the question I had dealt with other things in the original amendment. That's how long ago I asked to ask the question, so I'll wait.
Well, very well then. Members, I'm going to then have us vote on the second part of this amendment. This is the 1.4 through 1.8. And is there a roll call asked for this?
Yes, there was.
Very well. Representative Nash, there is a roll call, so we will then take the roll on this amendment. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Mariani,
No.
Christensen. No. Considine,
No.
Dean,
No.
Edelson,
No.
Grossel,
Yes.
Howard,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Lesh,
No.
Wong,
No.
Lucero,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Moeller,
No.
Nash,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Pinto,
No.
Poston,
Yes.
On a vote of 10 ayes and 7 nays, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I have this backwards. On a vote of 10 nays and 7 ayes, the motion does not prevail. Pardon?
Got the underline.
Right. So are we done with the amendment?
No, then we have another.
Go to Johnson, okay. All right, with that, members, I'm going to move to the, to honor our guests here. We will come back then to the,
Going to move the amendment.
oh, very well. So who made the initial motion? This is so long. Representative Dean renews his motion.
Mr. Chair,
To adopt the A5 amendment as amended.
Mr. Chair,
Representative
the
Johnson.
original amendment is what I'd like to add some questions on. I wanted to wait until we got to the original amendment.
Representative Johnson, I will allow us to have 5 minutes to do that. It is my very serious intent to honor the testimony of the public here while they are here. So please, you have 5 minutes, so keep that in mind, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, earlier, I'm not sure how long ago, it was brought up that there'd be no real impact to the State Patrol and the Sheriff's Office and the Police Departments to make these fields and do the programming so they can do this 4-month study. That's actually not going to be enough time to actually do a study, a proper study, to even find out what's going on. It's too short a time period. But all these programs with the e-citations, they're not owned by the state. Each department owns theirs. That means they're going to have a tech come in every one of our 500-600 law enforcement agencies to set up all these programs. This is a huge cost and a huge burden to our law enforcement agencies across the state. We already have a huge burden. We forced them years ago after September 11th, or no, it wasn't September 11th, it was after the bridge collapse, to go to the Armor system, which is an 800 megahertz radio system for better communications. Our counties and cities are paying thousands of dollars every year for multiple updates because we went to that. This is going to be another burden on them fiscally to spend a few thousand dollars to put these upgrades in for every single department in the state of Minnesota for a 4-month study to get this information in, which then will have to be shipped to pulled out, taking time to pull all this information out and sending it back to the commissioner. So I think this is a big undue burden on our law enforcement agencies to begin with. With a 4-month study, you're not going to get enough proper information to find out if there's actually anything going on. I would vote no against this amendment.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative Johnson, the intent behind this was simply to have State Patrol collect this data on State Patrol traffic stops. It was not, in my understanding, as I read the bill, this is not a mandate for all police agencies in the state of Minnesota to collect the data. It is simply a mandate for the Minnesota Highway Patrol to collect the data. And so this would only impact the e-citation system that Minnesota Highway Patrol operates under currently.
Representative Johnson, I'm going to ask our legal counsel to clarify what the amendment does in terms of who's responsible for collecting this data. Mr.
Mr. Chair and members, it puts a responsibility on the Department, the State Patrol. So the Department of Public Safety, working with Minnesota State Patrol, collect this data. Only the Minnesota State Patrol is required to collect the data. And paragraph E at line 2.5 through 2.8, there is permission for the Commissioner of Public Safety to request other relevant data from law enforcement agencies who decide to participate, but there is no requirement that other law enforcement agencies participate.
I'm good with that, but I would request a roll call on this amendment.
Very well. Representative Johnson requests a roll call on this. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have some concerns with the language, and I'm going to be very specific and pointed. Specifically about, we heard the communication about that this is an observation of race, and so that's, the misidentification of race is just, I mean, it's just a huge issue, right? So, you know, you look around the table right here, I myself travel, and I've traveled to every continent except Australia and Antarctica. And on every continent I've been on, I've been misidentified. In fact, I've rarely been identified as my true race. I'm not sure why, but when I was in India, they thought I was Brahmin Indian, which was wonderful. That's a beautiful thing. When I was in Ethiopia, they thought I was Japanese. When I was in Colombia, they thought I was Colombian, Latina, excuse me. So, and my colleague to my left is misidentified at almost every hearing that we talk about race. It is assumed by his skin color that he is Caucasian, he is not. So I have a great concern, unless you ask someone their race or ethnicity, you will not know. Because we are so mixed and so varied. In this room alone, there are a multitude of races and ethnicities. So I don't see how that's helpful or accurate, and I am always fair and accurate, and it's not going to be either one. Because if you are just by observation looking at someone, you are going to misidentify them. I myself have family members. I have a beautiful niece who's married to a gentleman from Trinidad and Tobago, and their children are of mixed race. I have another nephew who's married to an African American and Native American woman mix, and their children are a mix, and you can look at them and you don't know. They're just a mix of a lot of different things, from Scandinavian to, to African American to Native. So I have a big problem with even having this in here because you are going to misidentify more people than you're going to identify. Second thing, on line 1.16, you use the word gender. Now, gender means something very different than sex. Okay, we just had a very long hearing about that in the previous committee and judiciary. Now, on your driver's license, which I have mine renewed just this last summer, it says sex, it does not say gender. Sex is defined in law. Gender is not. There is no definition of gender. So we are talking about something completely different. If you mean sex, then you need to say sex. If you mean gender, then that's undefined and there is no statutory definition of gender. So that's a totally, utterly different thing. I think we just need to know what we're talking about. So one, I have a big problem with an observational determination of someone's race or ethnicity because you are going to misidentify the vast majority. And I'm not really sure what value that is, as we've already stated, but I'm mostly concerned about the misidentification, as I have been misidentified my entire life. I've been, like I said, even mistaken for Japanese, which was the most interesting. And on your driver's license, it does not say gender, it says sex. And on your driver's license, it does not say your race or ethnicity. Okay? So the only way to really know someone's gender is to ask them, because that's a self-identified, not an observational determination. And it is impossible to know someone's race or ethnicity without asking them. So either we're going to ask or we're not. And so we need to decide what we're going to do and put that into the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hornstein, I want to thank you for taking this amendment because I'm the one who pushed you to take it. And it seems to me that what perhaps the chair has not done well in this session is not to have had a very early conversation about racial profiling. Obviously a salient issue in our society today, and all sorts of people want to get it right. But we can't get right what we don't understand. It was not my intent to capture a quantitative measurement of who is being stopped, as much as to understand how and whether bias is playing a role in who does get stopped. And in order to know that, it seems to me that the observation of the person making the stop is critically important. That it is the perception of the person making the stop, that the information about that person's perception that then sets up the opportunity for us to have the conversation, the learning, and the adjustment of our professional practices so that, in fact, there are no biases that are the leading factor why someone would get stopped. As a brown guy, believe me, you know, throughout my whole life, I've had people think I'm white, I've had people think I'm brown, I've had people think I'm black. For a while, when I was real young, they thought I was Pakistani. The fact that I wore dashikis all the time, you know, probably contributed to that, you know. And so I understand that who I am truly was not the issue in terms of what people thought. It was important for me to know what they thought and how that judged their interaction with me. That goes to the essence of racial profiling. And so, Representative O'Neill, I appreciate your observations. I apologize to you and to the committee for not having the much fuller conversation that I think this committee should have had prior to this kind of hearing. And you have my word that we're going to have that kind of conversation in the coming year and a half that I've been privileged to chair this committee. With that, members, I do want to honor the public here, and so I'm going to move to a vote. The clerk will take the vote on the amendment, an A5 amendment, as amended.
Chair Mariani,
Yes.
Christensen. Christensen, Considine,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Edelson,
Yes.
Rossel. Rossel. Absent. Howard,
Yes.
Johnson. Lesh,
Aye.
Long. Lucero.
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 No.
Miller,
No.
Moeller,
Yes.
Nash. Nash,
Absent.
O'Neill. Pinto,
Yes.
Poston,
No.
It's not.
Members, on a vote of 10 ayes, 5 noes, 2 absent, the motion does prevail. Thank you, Representative Horston. You have some testifiers, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for now.
Representative Horston, do you want to bring your testifiers up, and then we'll try to move as expeditiously as possible? Why don't we begin with the first testifier while everyone continues to gather? And the format we use here is that we state our name for the record, and then we share our testimony.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Rhonda Maurer. I would like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. This is not my first time, nor will it be my last. My family has suffered unimaginable pain due to the growing epidemic of distracted driving. I, like most people, never thought it would affect my life. That is, until the evening of July 21st, 2015, when my Uncle Chuck, cousins Cassie, Alanita, and a family friend were on their way home from the Monticello Library. With a green light, my uncle followed traffic and entered an intersection. But he was struck by an extended cab Ford F-150 traveling at 65 miles an hour before he even made it to the middle. There was no sounds of screeching tires as no brakes were applied. The driver just flat out did not see the red light because she was not even looking at the road, even after multiple people in the vehicle had asked her to stop. The scene of the crash was chaotic, as there were 8 in total that were injured. 2 were airlifted, 6 were taken by ambulance to 3 different hospitals. By the time I reached the hospital, Chuck was already gone. I had the unfortunate experience of watching my cousin Patrick tell his little sister, who was just released from the hospital due to the same crash, that her dad didn't make it. I will never forget the heart-wrenching sound that echoed through the hospital corridor. When we went to see Cassie, she looked like she was sleeping. Besides the brain injuries, she only had a broken finger. We, however, were not allowed to touch or talk to her, as they didn't want us to stimulate her brain. 10 days after the crash, and 4 days after we laid Chuck to rest, we were told there was nothing else they could do for Cassie. The multiple surgeries, including removing part of her skull to release the pressure from her brain, did not work. She no longer had any brain activity. She was 10. It was another loss my family should not have had to endure. It was a 3-letter word that took 2 people out of my life. Damn. D-A-M. That is all it took. The bill we are talking about today is far overdue. Something needs to be done as the number of the crashes due to distracted driving continue to rise. We cannot allow this epidemic to continue taking the lives of our loved ones. Driving is a privilege, it is not a right. We need to get off of our phones while we are behind the wheel. It is our responsibility to make our roads safe. It is time for Minnesota to stand up and say enough is enough. We want to be able to get from A to B and not have to worry about the person behind us. Not have to worry about the person behind us on their phone not seeing us brake, or worry about the person next to us sideswiping us because they can't turn their head fully because they're holding their phone to their ear. I see it every day, no matter where I'm driving. Car goes over the white line, goes back over the yellow, back to the white, speeds up, slows down, because they are too engulfed in their phones. I am begging you to pass this bill, not for us sitting up here today, not for Julie, not for Megan, not for Penny, not for John, not for Cassie, and not for Chuck, but for you, for your family, for your friends. But most of all, I think we need to do it for Minnesota. I just want to get home at the end of the day. I just want to get to work at the beginning of my day. I don't want to have to worry about who's coming from where. I think it's time. Minnesota needs this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mauer. Please, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Hausladen, and I'm president of the Minnesota Trucking Association. We're a statewide safety organization that represents 650 trucking companies and their allied vendors from across the state. I'm here today to be one of 35 statewide business and advocacy organizations, from truckers to grocers to the Minnesota Chamber, that have adopted policies supporting hands-free cell phone legislation. I'm here to tell you that the business community is united in the belief that it is time to pass hands-free cell phone legislation in Minnesota. Every day, Minnesota businesses are putting their people who are husbands and fathers and mothers and daughters, they're putting their employees and their contractors on roadways filled with distracted drivers. And the results are alarming. The insurance industry reports that the only category of work-related injuries increasing today is motor vehicle accidents, and it's not a surprise. The data also shows that business and personal auto premiums are going up, and what's the common factor? Driving distracted and cell phone use. Now, professional truck drivers, they already operate in a one-touch, hands-free mode because it's a federal requirement. And I have to tell you, when we talk to our members and look at what we do to serve Minnesota and our customers, it has not hampered our ability to do it. But what our professional drivers see every day is quite alarming. Rather than focusing on the driving task, we see people looking at their just phones. They're even watching videos. And professional truck drivers say, put down the phone, focus on the road. So the business community does look forward to passing House File 50 in 2019 and reducing distracted drivers for our people, for our employees and contractors, and all Minnesota motorists. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the testifiers? I do want to, I am humbled, Ms. Maurer, by your words. I'm humbled by your words, and I'm also sorry for the loss of your loved ones and for your neighbors who have come here as well. I appreciate you being here. I can't imagine the courage that it takes to be public and share your pain with us. But I do see that you do it out of love and care for all of us. And so I want to thank you humbly for your presence here today. Are there any questions or observations? Representative O'Neill.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I am the state representative for Monticello, Buffalo, and Maple Lake. And so I believe you said the Monticello Library is where they were leaving, that they left from?
Smart.
So I just wanted to give you my condolences as well. And I'm pretty sure that whatever road they were on, it's probably a road that I've traveled multiple times. If they were leaving the Monticello Library, it's a road that I'm not sure which direction they were headed, but I'm sure it was one that I've traveled quite a bit, and I'm so sorry for your loss as well.
Representative Bowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also wanted to thank you for coming and also recognize that we've been receiving on our committee a lot of emails from other families and survivors who aren't probably here in person with us. And one email struck me. It was someone's birthday today, I think, was one of the victims of distracted driving. It would have been his birthday today, and I just recall that email. So I just wanted to thank all of those families that have been emailing us who maybe weren't also able to be here in person today. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hornstein, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Christensen? Representative Christensen, please.
And I will just pile on the thank yous here. You are the real reason we are here today and why the bill was written. So we got a little bit off track, and I'm sorry about that, but I appreciate you being here. And we won't forget you. This is a nonpartisan issue, and today it seemed partisan, but believe me, the letters I've gotten have been from everyone in my community. So I want to thank you very much, and I think this is the year something might work. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony and your presence here today. Representative Hornstein, I believe we have a question for you. We never actually got you to go through your bill really quickly. So I want to give you an opportunity to do that, but I also know Representative Miller has a question. Representative Hornstein, it's probably appropriate for you to tell us what your bill does.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. First of all, House File 50 is an effort to reverse, as you heard, what has become an epidemic of distracted driving on our highways here in Minnesota. It's legislation that will prevent deaths and injuries on Minnesota highways. In recent years, there have been an average of 59 deaths and 223 serious injuries in our state due to distracted driving, and it's the fastest growing cause of fatal crashes in the state. We know bills like this work, members. They have in other states where crash rates have been significantly lowered. And I would say, just in summary, this bill saves lives. We know that, it's proven, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Basically, time is short, so I'm just going to summarize in just a few minutes what this bill does. I want to be clear, this is not a ban on cell phone use. It is a ban on handheld cell phone use. And, we allow the use of wireless communications and voice activation, and we allow cell phone calls and functions made with one touch activation. And so there are some exceptions. If you want to use a handheld device for emergency assistance in the event of an immediate life or safety threat or danger, and an authorized emergency vehicle. But basically, to summarize, and I know people have questions, what can I do, what can't I do? It's very simple, members. You can't hold a cell phone while you're driving. That's pretty much this bill in a nutshell. And as I said, we have seen significant reductions in crash rates and fatalities and injuries in the 17 states and District of Columbia where this bill has been enacted.
Well, thank you, Representative Hornstein. Before we get to Representative Miller's question, I do want to ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to testify against the bill. Please come forward, sir. Please state your name for the record and give us your testimony.
Chairman, committee members, my name is Brett Collier. I'm from Big Lake, Minnesota, and I work as an engineering consultant in the nuclear industry. And I sit before you again simply as a concerned citizen. I thought we settled how we were not in favor of making it illegal to simply hold a phone in your hand while driving last session. I provided testimony last session pointing out that of the 74 distracted driving deaths that occurred in Minnesota in 2015, only 2 could be attributed to talking on the phone, and we don't even know if those 2 drivers were holding the phone to their ear or using hands-free technology. House File 50 proposes making it holding the phone in your hand illegal, subjecting the offender to what today would be a $50 fine for the first offense. This is the same fine that a person caught texting and driving today would receive, and the same fine that a person back in 2015 would have received if they were caught texting and driving. Did that threat of a $50 fine cause those drivers in 2015 to stop texting and driving? No. So let me ask you, if this proposed statute had been in place back in 2015, how many additional lives would it have saved? The answer is none. But the supporters of this bill somehow believe that making it illegal to even hold your phone in your hand will reduce distracted driving deaths. This makes no sense whatsoever. If a $50 fine doesn't stop a driver from texting then, why would it do so now? Last session, a representative from the Highway Patrol testified that they were in support of this bill because it would make it easier to hand out tickets, not having to prove in each instance that the person was texting or not. Making it easy is not the standard for passing a statute. Let's say we want to make it easy for the police to arrest drunk drivers. Should we stop administering breath tests and other sobriety tests? It would appear that with a 30% increase in texting and driving citations issued in 2018, that's 9,554 citations, which is an increase of 459% over 2012, when only 1,707 citations were handed out, that the police have been able to figure out how to more easily hand out these citations. Now to circle back to the beginning of my testimony, it's not the person talking on the phone that's causing distracted driving accidents, but the person texting with their eyes on their phone screen instead of the road. Some of the supporters of this bill will tell you that you just need to purchase and use a hands-free device, which is allowed by this bill. But even according to a recent Star Tribune article, a study from Queensland University of Technology in Australia found that talking on a cell phone with a hands-free device while driving is just as distracted as a conversation using a handheld phone. So if the supporters believe that holding the phone to your ear is a distraction that contributes to distracted driving deaths, and it's shown that the use of a hands-free device is just as distracting, why allow the use of a hands-free device in this bill?
Mr. Hilliard, I'm going to interrupt, and I do apologize. There is another committee that's coming in here in a few minutes. I'll give you the option of whether you can wrap up in a minute or so. Otherwise, you can absolutely come back, because we're going to reconvene later to finish.
I've got about this much left.
Very well, sir. If you can do it in a minute, I would be
I'll talk
greatly
faster.
appreciative. Thank you.
And this study came out in 2016, but what this tells me is that the legislative supporters of this bill are not so concerned about actual public safety, but that they want to look like they're concerned with public safety. The only thing that this bill will do is result in thousands of drivers being ticketed for performing an action that, per statistics, have shown to not be a major cause of distracted driving deaths, not even 3% of the 2015 deaths. This bill will only result in the issuance of thousands of tickets, collecting millions of dollars, creating a new revenue stream. There is another bill in the House, House File 104, that wishes to increase the current fine from $50 to at least $150, then up to $500 for the third offense, with the Senate version actually revoking your license for a period of time following the third offense. This is a sound and logical path that Minnesota should take. This is an increase in both penalty and deterrent for the actions that were actually causing distracted driving deaths. But let me remind you, if both the hands-free bill and the increase to the fines bill were to pass this session, you're going to be charging people who are simply holding their phones to their ears a penalty of at least $150 and possibly revoking their license for something that statistically is not a major contribution to distracted driving deaths. What the proponents are not telling you,
Mr. Hilliard,
Collier,
I do have the other committee actually already in the room now, so I certainly will invite you to finish your testimony later, if you wish. And I'm sure there might be questions as well, so I do want to invite you back.
Okay.
At that time. So members, we're going to reconvene in room 10 at 5:30. And until then, this committee stands in recess.